Hello, this is Don Cusic with the Music Biz, and today my guest is Patsy Bruce with Bruce Enterprises. Patsy, first let me ask you, how did you get started in the music industry?
Well, I married my major client, I guess. I started in the music industry by accident, which is not an uncommon story. Ed and I bought a restaurant and bar when I was going to MTSU. And I quit a semester away from graduating, and we operated the restaurant and bar. I, being a promoter, went out and secured a local noon talk show to be broadcast on WKDA radio, which at that time, Don, was country. And they came in, broadcast from the restaurant at lunch. That drew an enormous crowd.
We had
yes, we had all the music business there, eating lunch. The hostess of that show was transferred out of town with her husband. I didn't want to lose the show. They didn't have anybody in mind, so I sat down at the microphone because she just almost left overnight and started doing the radio show. Mm-hmm. Doing that, I met all the people, promoters, whatever, in the music business. Opened a publishing company. The first song in that publishing company was Mamas Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys. It just sort of snowballed from there. Ed at that time was doing an awful lot of local commercials. Herbert Materials, Third National Bank, things like that. And I thought, well, gosh, if he's this good to do these, then he's probably good enough to do some national commercials. We sold the restaurant, which was always our intention. We bought it at a time, was given to us almost, and we built it up and sold it in its peak tourist season. I went to New York, talked to the ad agencies up there, and told them that I thought he could do commercials. I had a little red book that listed the 10 most powerful advertising agencies in the world by that from the billings that, you know, they billed the most. It had 4 pages in it, and I just sat down and called those phone numbers, set up an appointment. Didn't even know what position to ask for at that point. Got in to see 8 of the 10. In 6 months, Ed had worked for 6 of the 8. And that year made over $250,000 doing national commercials. Goodness. I thought, my goodness, this is a good deal, you know. I bet if I can do this for him, I can do it for somebody else. Opened the Bruce Agency. We represent over 350 actors and actresses and announcers who do movies and TV series and commercials. Now I've been kicked upstairs and I have an agent who does that all the time, and I basically am involved in the marketing and consulting with corporations and management.
Managing Ed.
Ed Bruce.
And you will be managing other clients too in the future.
Yes. For a long time, people have asked me, why do you only manage Ed? I like to tell them that I wanted to get better before I got bigger. Mm-hmm. I learned management what I think is a pretty good way. I learned managing somebody that I love. So I don't know but one kind of management, and that is focused toward the act. And record companies have approached me for about the last 3 years, and I've always been honored by that and proud of it, but it just didn't seem like the right time. Now, however, I have a phenomenal staff, some of them with just credentials as good as mine, and I was approached by an act just last night that is an act that I admire musically, and I have meetings with them next Thursday.
Okay. Other than being the wife of the act, what does managing an act involve?
Well, that's a common question that we get all the time. We just happen to be married to each other anymore. I'm his manager from 9 to 5. When we're working, I usually don't even tell somebody my last name. If I'm walking in to meet a promoter, I stick my hand out and say, hello, I'm Patsy and I'm Ed's manager. Our PR has preceded us in many cases, so people know that. But managing an act means everything from helping select the material that goes into the record, to finding out from the act where they want to be 5 years from now, and setting the goal and the plan to get there for this year, next year, 3 years, 5 years down the road. An act hopefully doesn't just want to still be getting on a bus every Thursday and going to Dubuque, Iowa to play a concert and come home. Most of them now want to do movies, and they want, to get involved in book deals. They want write songs for movies, and the sky's the limit. If you have an artist that has a lot of talent, there's nothing he can't do or she can't do with correct management. People say you can make it without a manager. Yeah, you're going to have the same amount of talent, and they are not the where-all and be-all. But I can tell you one thing, any act should have nothing to worry about except how good their show is. Not to say they shouldn't know who's paying for what, how much money they're making, all of those things. They should be intricately involved in checking the books, so to speak, and in telling their manager where they want to be 5 years from now, and no, they don't want to always be playing clubs. They want to move on to concerts. But they shouldn't have to worry.
So you see yourself as a personal salesman?
No, I'll tell you what, I guess the best analogy, Don, is a manager is, if you will imagine the wheel of a car, it has a hub, and that hub is the manager. And out those spokes is the record label, the promoter, the booker, all of the different facets of the career, the tax attorney and so forth. And you've got to keep that wheel turning, and you've got to keep those spokes the same distance apart, all at the right time, the wheel going in the right direction. The artist, you're weaving is really what you're doing, I guess. It looks like a spider web.
And hope you don't have a flat tire.
That's exactly right. And an artist can certainly blow a tire.
Yeah. How about, now you're talking about the career plan, that you actually sit down and ask somebody their goals and figure out how long it's going to take them to do it?
Help them figure out. Sometimes they can't. If I say to an artist, well, where do you want to be 5 years from now? They may have never thought about that. What do you want? What are you doing now? One of the things I'll do with this particular act is I will ask them what they've been doing in the last year. I want to know some things like not just money, but the venues that they've played. We have a book in our office that's about this thick, that is leather bound, that has every state in the union in it. And behind each section in there is every club, every date that Ed Bruce played last year in the month of January, February, March, broken out by months. In addition to that is every press interview he did last year, the month he did it in. Adjacent to that is a box that acts as a tickler file, so that we see we haven't talked to the Houston Post in 6 months. We know it's time to do it on this trip into Houston. But were we to go back into Houston in 3 months, we wouldn't try for that interview. That's the master plan for the artist. And we look at that book and we say, okay, we made $200,000 this year. We want to make $400,000 next year. How am I going to do that? Well, I can't play that little club in Sardis, Mississippi again. I've got to move to the next plateau. How am I going to do that? Well, sponsorship might be the answer. Commercials might be the answer. Can the act act? Is it possible for them to do movies?
How far ahead do you plan? How many years?
5 years. Seriously, 5 years, okay? But not in minute detail. We have an overall goal that may go a little beyond 5 years. If an act tells me that they want to be Dolly Parton in 5 years, and I honestly don't think they can be, because I don't think maybe they can't act, or maybe they don't sing and write and act, and it's the exception that only does one anymore, Don. I would have to honestly say to that act, I'm sorry, I don't see that. Now, here's what I do see. And if the act and I cannot agree, and he takes that as an offense, ego-wise, then he should be someplace else. Because I'm real blunt and real realistic. I will help you get anything that you want. I will tell you whether I think you can have it or not. I'll tell you what I can do to help you get there. But I will never tell you I can get you something just to get you to sign a contract.
So you decide whether to manage an act of basically whether you can trust one another and can get along.
That's exactly right. whether I can make your dream come true. I have a story that I tell. Back in the 50s, the music people were well known for maybe not letting the artist or the songwriter have all the royalties that they had earned, and they would keep them happy by buying them a new car. Maybe the writer, Joe Blow, would come into publisher or record company and say, well, now look here, I'm not happy, and so forth, and he'd buy him a new car, and he'd go off happy. Success very often to an act then was a particular car. Maybe it was a pink Cadillac. I tell people that if an artist wants a pink Cadillac and that is what is success to him, as a manager, if you do not feel you can give it to him and you sign him, you've done that act an injustice. And until you get him that pink Cadillac in his mind, he will never be successful. You can buy him 5 Ferraris, and he will never be happy. We all have some goal in our mind. We want to be on the CMA board. We want to play Carnegie Hall. We want to co-star in a movie with Jane Fonda. Everybody has this dream. And until you get the act to verbalize it to you. And it sometimes takes 6 months or a year to get it down from the large end of the funnel to the small end of the funnel so it will come out in words that you can translate into a career. Then you won't know what that is. But as soon as they tell you what it is, then it's your responsibility as a manager to help them get it.
Now, the artist's dreams are visible, and you can see them. They're mostly glamorous. What are a manager's dreams? What do you get off on?
I've always thanked God that He gave me no talent whatsoever for singing or performing. I get so much thrill out of turning the spotlight on, for lack of a better word. I get just as excited when we finish a great song as I do when we finish a good contract with a record label or with a sponsor. Knowing that I can pick up the phone and get through to the head of Warner Brothers TV or film, or that I can walk into McCann Erickson Advertising Agency in New York and see the president, or that I can call the president of Needham, Harper and Steers and get him on the phone, or that some of my corporation clients fly in here for the weekend and we just go and do things like eat catfish at Sarge's in Culleoka, Tennessee, to take the president of Honda and put him in your 10-year-old Mercedes with 180,000 miles on it and go off into the country. That's success to me. That's what I enjoy.
Would you rather have been able to play and sing?
Oh, no, I'm really sincere. That's the honest truth. I don't know that Ed and I would have lasted. We've been married 20 years and know almost everybody, and I observe people very closely. I don't see a lot of happy marriages where they both perform. By nature, the nature of the beast, Don, is that one must have a particular kind of ego to go out there and face 500, 5,000, 50,000, 500,000 people. It takes a certain ego. That ego does not allow you to be a sharing, unselfish person generally. And that's not an unkind thing to say, you see, because, well, let me see if I can get more specific. Let's take a glass of water, and it's filled this far with water. I only have this much room to put Coca-Cola or whiskey or oil or whatever I want to put in it. An artist is filled up this far with talent. He only has this much room left to deal with wife, family, money, car, bills, children. So he is a little off balance. You and I may have this much talent and this much room to deal with every day walking down the street. So he is different. He has to be different to do what he does. I'm so glad I didn't get that kind of balance, but I'm so glad that every artist did. And I view it my job to protect them. And they do need protection. I don't mean forgiveness. I don't mean that in a condescending manner. I just mean that it's up to us to take care of that off balance and let them go do what they do. Have you ever imagined a world without music, without artists, without entertainment? It would be boring. It would be horrible. So I think a manager has to view it as her responsibility or his responsibility to let the world see that talent and enjoy it and bask in its light.
How about image? You're dealing with image
Oh, sure.
as well as career plans and marketing plans. How do you develop the image? How do you work on an image for an artist?
Well, first thing I do is just look at the artist. If you had singing talent, Don, which you may or may not, I don't know, but if you did, I would take a look at you physically first, and I'd spend hours talking to you, and I would see what you're comfortable with. I cannot put you in an image that you have to step in and out of and you be successful in that. For instance, Ed Bruce wears blue jeans, cowboy boots, and cowboy hats, and so does Jimmy Dean. They have been wearing them for years. That is them. So it's not a created image. That's the way they dress. They dress that way because they prefer to. However, if I took someone like you and put you in those clothes, that's like the old rhinestone suit days, when we only put rhinestones on to go on stage. This is particularly true with a country artist. They have to have an image that they don't step in and out of, that they always are, so that now, not only are they on stage, they're on television talk shows, they are everywhere. They need to be that way all the time. They don't have to stop and think, okay, now wait a minute, I've got to turn this switch, get in this image, put these clothes on, and go be this other person. I think images have to fit the person within reason.
So it's an extension of that person.
Completely.
But isn't the stage persona a little bit different than the home persona?
Well, it's a good thing I'm both a manager and a wife here, because
I knew you could answer that question.
I can answer that question. Yes and no, and that's not an avoidance. It is and it isn't. They always need to be the brightest light in the room. They always need to be in the spotlight. No matter how humble they are, no matter how good they are, no matter how much applause they get, it is never enough. But we're back to what gives them the guts to walk out in front of 10,000 people and sing. Every time they do that, they're putting their soul on the line. You and I may sell shoes or teach students or peddle beer or whatever it is we do for a living. That's a product that you can hold in your hand. It's cold, it's inanimate. That entertainer is a living, breathing soul. And when he's rejected, it's a person that's rejected. It's something that's hurt, and something dies inside of them every time. So as a manager, I try to never put them in a position of failing. Win-win is what you always want. Now, you're not always going to be able to do that, but that's what you try to do. You nurture them like you do children.
But they're not just people, they're also product. You also hear,
Yes,
you're
they are
referred to as product.
That's
and
right.
for that you have a marketing plan to market this product. What is a marketing plan and how do you get it?
Well, again, you're back to the image, aren't you? You've created the image now, and you've decided, okay, this is what this person's going to be. Let's take Ed Bruce as an example, because I'm closest to that. We have this image of a cowboy, a country singer. Let's decide how we're going to go on the road. In order to go on the road, we need buses, we need bands, and we need sound system, and we need light. Well, we're not selling enough records here at the beginning of our career, so what are we going to do? Well, let's augment our income by doing commercials. We have a great voice. That'll give us some income. We'll take some of that investment and invest it in the career of making records and of going on the road. When we do that, it's still an expensive proposition, so how can we defray some of those expenses? We need a sponsorship. Well, a sponsorship. I can't imagine Ivory Snow sponsoring a cowboy, but what would? A beer. He sings country music people drink beer. Let's go approach the breweries and make an endorsement deal, and that will help us go on the road.
How about marketing the records, though? Do you have a marketing plan for that? Do you know the people that will want to buy an Ed Bruce record?
Oh, yes, we do. Out of our office, we actually do phone calls and do marketing studies. I have a girl that comes in constantly and just calls. All over the country, we use a Watts line, and she'll call and just engage them like radio station does in conversation and get answers to questions. The marketing of the records, I don't leave it to the record company. I go have meetings with them from the moment the product is cut to make the decision on the album cover, on the title of the album, on, okay, what's the game plan? What do we view? What do we think the 3 singles, 4 singles are off of this album? Okay, what order do we think those are going to be in? Well, they're going to be A, B, C, D. All right, A, we've got to decide if it's the first album on the label. We probably are going to kind of coast through the first single. We're going to do some things, but we're going to get to know each other, get the team going. By second single, and if it's cut far enough ahead of time, of course you could do it with the first one. But unfortunately, usually when an act makes an album and releases its first single on a new label, you haven't been together long enough to know what to do. So you lay the plan when the album's cut, and then you work the plan. And it's that simple. And you decide what is his strong points, what are the cities the record label needs him in, what sort of things does the record label want him to do, is he weak at retail, is he weak in concerts, is he weak at radio. Ed is an almost 75% automatic ad at radio. That means of the 125 Billboard reporting stations, 75% of them are going to add his record within the first 2 weeks of release. So that says to me, I don't have to work as hard anymore on radio. I've spent 15 years having this artist out here doing free concerts for the radio station, charity events, always going to the station. And so I guess, is he selling enough records? Maybe he's not selling enough records. I'll go to the record company and we'll come up with a game plan. Maybe we'll work all the conventions where the retailers bring in all of their store people. And we'll perform for them so they'll get to know the act. It's as different, there are certain basics, but it's different really with every act. When we are on the road, we do several things. First of all, there's a 6-week, 5-week, 4-week plan in which all the radio stations, all the print media, all the television stations are contacted by a tour press and tour coordinator person in our office. And the clock starts ticking, and we start fulfilling the ones that just want to talk to him on the phone ahead of time, and the ones that want him to come to the station when he gets into the city. If there are any reporting stations in the city, we make arrangements for him to go there, drop off backstage passes personally to those people, invite them to the concerts. The game plan is different for each act, but there are certain things you have to do. If you do it for one, you can probably do it for 5.
Can you take a total unknown act? Can a manager take a total unknown act and make them a star?
A manager can't do that, but the talent, the unknown act and the manager can, if the unknown act has talent. That's the first requirement. Can they sing? Can they act? Can they write? Without that talent that we are given, born with, whatever, we're not ever going to make it for very long. We may have 1 successful record, 2 successful records, but we can't fool all the people all the time. A record label, if the records aren't selling, you're going to end up getting dropped. But yeah, I would say that if I had a great talent, there's one out now. Restless Heart. Nobody knew who they were. That's phenomenal music. Yeah, I think you could take them and make them a star, but...
But at what point in a career does an artist need a manager? The total unknown doesn't need a manager. They've got to carve a little niche.
No, they don't.
Where in the career does an artist need a manager?
Whenever they're going to play with the big boys. If you're going to stay in the club in Murfreesboro or Memphis, when you're paying your dues, so to speak, you don't have any need for a manager. Once you reach the point that you're going to try to go on and become national in scope, then you need to find a manager, but not the gas man, not your aunt, not your mother's friend who manages the boutique, a professional manager. You see, somebody who is a part-time manager and who is by profession a salesperson at the local department store is a greater detriment to you than no manager at all.
But a lot of times that's the only people that will be interested in that act.
Well,
Is that correct?
Well, probably, but not if they have talent. See, I believe that you cannot put talent in a drawer, close the drawer, and lock it, and pour concrete over it and keep it in that drawer. Talent and desire are eventually going to be heard. They're going to be heard by me or another manager. they're going to be heard by somebody.
What about the talent, the incredibly talented person that's self-defeating, that doesn't have it together personally? They've got the talent, the raw talent, but somehow they don't.
Hopefully,
you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying, and I could give you some names. I have to tell you that all artists have a certain self-destruct inside of them. There's a little button, because there's such a dichotomy between what they're doing and what they think they're capable of doing. Most of them are totally afraid and overcome that fear every time they have to go on stage. In answer to your question about the person who's self-defeating, hopefully they will either find somebody who believes so much in their talent and straightens them out before he puts them in the mainstream, but God forbid he take them to a major label or to Nashville or to LA and throw them in that stream and have them blow up. Because if they blow apart, it's harder to start over than it is to start.
Where does an artist make most of their money?
Well, every night on the stage, generally, depending on the act.
Live
We're talking about live
Mhm.
performances.
How about a manager? Where do they make most of their money?
Well, it all depends. If you take the $250,000 that Ed made that one year, and you take a 20% fee for that, that's a lot of money.
Be in commercials.
If you took, it depends upon where the act's making the most money. I charge any act 20% to manage them because of my expertise. You're getting all these systems that are already set up. You're getting a trained tour press person. You're getting all those things. A manager has expenses. You see, I don't charge for that tour press. That's a service our management office offers. People say, well, that's nuts. It's not nuts, because it increases my fee. You see, the more accepted they are, the more concerts they do, the more people who know them, the happier the record label is, the more money they put in them, the more money the manager makes.
How do you get started being a manager?
Exhibit talent for getting along with people, for having a good brain, for liking people, for thinking fast on your feet, for patience of Job.
Where do you learn that?
Living is how I learned it.
Just born with it, huh?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like being able to sing, Don. Not everybody can be a manager. Not everybody can be a singer. Not everybody is equipped.
Okay. Thank you, Patsy Bruce, on the Music Biz Today.